the imperial ultimate science. It's science with black Mr. Griffin and the other guy. It's science! Yeah! Woo!
Hello. Today's video is about how scientists have arrived to the theory of plate tectonics.
Prove it!
I'm about to.
Okay, cool.
With
I'm good with that then.
All right, so I think our students have heard of this before, but long ago, there was this large, what we like to call supercontinent. Basically, all the continents that we have now, they look slightly different, but they're also all combined together. It was called Pangea.
Pangea. One big landmass.
Right. This was about 250 million years ago.
Bet you saved on gas.
Way in the past.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, tell me about it.
Well, you don't have to drive as far.
Now, obviously, we're not a giant continent here on Earth. We have Australia way off in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
North America is separate from Europe. So these plates have gradually moved apart, which is why we have our modern continents.
Are they still moving?
They are still moving.
Interesting.
Right. Now we're going to talk here about how we actually know that we once had this supercontinent, and we now have all these separate continents.
Take a look at this.
So, oh yeah, here's a picture of Pangea. Yeah.
Just a rough estimate, but to give you guys an idea how they fit together like jigsaw puzzles.
Yep.
So it is a theory, but there's a lot of evidence, and so it's a very, very strong theory.
So thinking back to the beginning of the course, we talked about how theory, sometimes people think this just means, oh, it's an idea or a hunch.
Right.
No, theory means there's a lot of evidence. There's been a lot of studies done, a lot of tests that have been run that still support the evidence. If one test ever indicated that the idea was wrong, that part's either out of the theory or the theory's just scrapped. Okay,
it's got to be modified somehow, but they are testable and they are stressed constantly.
And the other thing to remember is the theory is the explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So
the
fact that it happens, plate tectonics happens. We know the plates move.
We know that's a fact, but we have a theory of how. So this explains how things work.
Right.
And one of the first things that we're going to see here is the simplest and easiest one for us to kind of just look at grossly, and especially now that we can go up into outer space, we can look at the relative shapes of our continents. And there you can see over there that we have South America, the east coast of South America kind of butted into the west coast of Africa. And yeah, you can see how they kind of fit together. And we can find this similar kind of pattern of fitting them together into what would have been a supercontinent and then broke apart as the plate shifted and kept drifting, and they're still drifting now. We can see this pattern. We call it like kind of the jigsaw evidence of it.
Like puzzle pieces.
It's a very simple kind of visual thing.
Right.
We're going to talk about some deeper stuff in a second.
Right.
One of those things is the fossil record. So you all know fossils are living organisms that at one time, or they're not living anymore, but they were living.
They were living, yeah.
They died long time ago, and under certain conditions and pressure and stuff have turned into a more rock-like material, which is a fossil.
Made an imprint of their body, and then it made a cast of that body, and it's lasted millions and millions of years.
So one of the evidence piece that we have that fits in directly with this Pangea idea is the fact that we have evidence of land-dwelling organisms found on different continents that are basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that, and these organisms are ones that there's no way they would have been able to cross the ocean or the vastness of the oceans with the way their structures are. So the only possible or plausible explanation we can come up with is that at one time they had the ability to walk from one area to the other.
Because they were connected.
Yeah, and it was one big herd kind of thing. So you can see like on South America and Africa, that first little tan area there would have been one population, one big herd of that organism.
Around.
And they lived there, and then as the water got wider and wider in between South America and Africa as they moved apart, then eventually those two herds would have been two separate herds, and as they died, the fossils will be similar in both places, even though now they're separated by hundreds and hundreds of miles of water.
Well, I would even say they probably still even died when those continents were together.
Yeah,
yeah. Because
they died when it's together, and then they kept dying as they go apart, but the fossils are the same. So you're going to see similar fossil records through the whole time period.
Yep. So, kind of the same thing as fossil records. We actually look at the rocks that these fossils are within. And the rocks that are in certain areas of, and once again, South America and Africa have the best evidence for this. You can see patterns where there's certain big, blob's a bad word, but
rock formations.
Large regions of rocks, certain types of rock that you find in the layers that you only find in certain parts of Africa and certain parts of South America. And those parts are exactly where we once thought that those continents were connected. So you can see like this continuous rock formation that maybe once existed.
And do they almost look like they would line up? Like if you were to take them together, would they look like they match?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was
thinking. And they can do them
if you were to trace like where these rock patterns occur in each continent, and you put those two shapes together, you notice that those lines practically continue into the other continent.
Cool.
Meaning that that rock was maybe fresh rock, for lack of a better term, when those continents were connected, and it's since been buried after they've been connected. So, and this is 2 billion year old rock that we're talking about. So it's long,
Really
long
old.
ago. Yep.
Really old.
Yep. Before Pangea even. But
So
let me-
glaciers. Tell us about glaciers.
Yeah.
What are these glacier things?
So glaciers are really, really, really big blocks of ice.
So they're naturally
Very,
occurring.
very, very tall. It's not just
Real
like a block of ice this big. We're
So-
talking like
Bigger than an ice.
We're talking
Yeah.
like basically mountains of ice, right?
Right.
Somewhat under the water,
hundreds of
sometimes on
miles
land.
and hundreds of miles in size.
right,
Like that we're
right.
talking.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
huge. Okay, and they move very slowly, and when they do move, they leave markings in the rock.
So like
Okay,
furrows
so you
and-
can generally see where glaciers have been in the past by where these grooves are
The
left.
grooved path that they leave, like over
Trail and
miles.
stuff.
Interesting.
Okay.
Right. So, we can actually see in some tropical areas, like in Africa, South America, Australia, I'm sure, you can actually find areas where they have glaciation marks in the rock, where glaciers used to be. Okay? So this indicates that it's possible that the continents were connected together and they were further south where Antarctica is. And actually, going back to fossils, there are some fossils that you find in South America and you find in Australia that you also find in Antarctica because those three were once
Connected to each other?
Yep.
Very cool.
So anyway, here's a picture of, I believe this picture was from southern Africa, and you can see there's snow up there because it's a mountain, but
Right.
it's not cold enough for there to be a glacier there.
No.
But yet there was a glacier because the area of land used to be way further south connected with everything else, and it's probably a bit colder period on Earth as well, but glaciers weren't everywhere at that point.
Yeah.
But
So what are those, the little like grooves? Is that what you're kind of...
that's exactly where the cutting action from the
Oh,
glacier
okay,
comes.
okay.
So it's
Okay.
just
That's very
slid
cool,
across
very
the
cool.
land, scraping that up.
So
What's it going to look like in the future, Mr.
In the
Harkins?
wait, let me think. Wait, I don't have psychic powers.
Oh, come on.
But based
All right.
on what we're seeing currently and using satellite evidence in that, the tectonic plates are still moving. It has not stopped. This is an ongoing process. We measure it all the time. They move anywhere from, depending on like where you measure it on the Earth, anywhere from maybe 2.5 centimeters a year, all the way up to maybe 15 centimeters a year. On average, like the U.S., I think is moving about 5 centimeters a year,
Roughly.
roughly.
Away from Europe. I
Away
believe,
from
right?
Europe, more towards the west. So California is moving more towards like Japan and the Pacific Rim. The Atlantic Ocean is actually growing out by New York, getting bigger. The span's getting bigger. Pacific is shrinking, but it's happening so slowly that obviously we're not seeing like water rushing up over land. It just
Right.
happens very slowly,
It's
and
not like we
water's
can
moving
feel
down
it.
around South America, and we just keep kind of going.
do you know, by the way, are they able to measure how it's moving in the Atlantic Ocean?
They are now, especially with the advent of more powerful GPS satellites and
GPS.
other, like I believe NOAA
Yep.
has not NOAA like they have the
Yeah,
boat.
NOAA.
NOAA, they have satellites that do that specifically are focused on just measuring the plate.
Yep.
Yeah, that mid-Atlantic ridge in the middle of the
Yep.
ocean. They
They've
can
got
actually
markers on the
measure
planet,
year by year
geosynchronous
how
satellites,
much
and-
fresh rock there is
Yep.
down there.
Pretty
It's pretty
cool.
amazing. Like
There's
the
actually
stuff that
some
we
with
can do.
magnetism too, but I
Yeah.
forget
Very
off the top of my
similar
head.
to some of the technology in your phone for GPS. It's a
Yep.
more sophisticated
So that's
version.
actually it. I have a cool video, but we'll show that in class.
Let's
About-
show it in class.
Yep.
I'm out.
Yep.